A quick introduction to this site is that it is the KelloggBirdSanctuary, which is within the larger research station of the Kellogg Biological Research Station, and that is ran by Michigan State University. So it is located in West Michigan, which is about 30 minutes outside of Kalamazoo and about an hour outside of Grand Rapids, if you're familiar with the area. And it was originally founded as a place for research efforts and conservation efforts in the waterfowl species, such as Canada geese and trumpeter swan. And my goal with this project is to create a playground for them to attract more visitors. And the research question that I had specifically was what design elements promote a play space to have a lasting effect in environmental education and conservation. Kellogg Bird Sanctuary has quite a few species of birds on site, all listed below. These are species that they take care of in their enclosed exhibits, separated into areas such as birds of prey, game birds, and waterfowl. They are also notable for the large amount of wild waterfowl and songbirds that stop over during their migration, along with year-long visitors that you can see at any time of year. The specific area of the sanctuary that I'm being tasked with designing is labeled on the right, a very central area that would be one of the first places a visitor encounters before touring the rest of the site, which is ideal for something like a playground attraction. According to my informant, the main reason KBS wanted a playground was to give visitors with young kids a reason to stay at the sanctuary that wasn't just birds. With the discontinuation of wild bird feeding, something they became known for, a playground only made more sense to keep visitors engaged in the absence of that. So, when approaching the design for this playground, I wanted it to be methodical with what goals it needed to achieve. These are specifically attraction, retention, and education. And here I identify what design elements it actually takes to achieve those goals. And while a lot of it is interpretive, what it all came down to at the end was finding some sort of narrative, a narrative drive to the story, design, and impact. Naturally, the next step was figuring out what that narrative could be. I researched back into the history of KBS and their role in the nationwide effort of conservation in the trumpeter swan and the Canada goose. Conservation is what started the sanctuary, so tying it into the narrative I was trying to tell was clearly important. As I researched, I also noted that KBS was a pretty important spot on the path of migration many birds take yearly, specifically the Mississippi flyway. That, too, I wanted to incorporate, to make sure that visitors know why preserving even the smallest of lakes and ponds and streams and forests, basically pit stops for these birds, was incredibly important to their health as a species. To complete the narrative, I wanted to not just focus on the birds themselves, but the ecosystems they live in. A species cannot thrive without a healthy habitat, and a healthy habitat cannot be healthy when it lacks its key species. I figured that the play space should be themed in a bite-sized vignette of Michigan's key ecosystems, reflecting the vast variety of where and how birds live. These ecosystems I narrowed down to freshwater dunes, inland lakes, tamarack swamp, a type of swamp that's dominated by larch trees, unique to primarily Michigan and Wisconsin, for those unfamiliar, then deciduous forest and boreal forest. Here is my analysis slide where I took a few handfuls of information about the site and how I planned to use them in design. This figure you see taking up most of the page was my research according to eBird of what wild birds visited when, and how much more common they were here than in other spaces. I wanted to do this so I could get a sense of why this was such a popular place to birdwatch, according to the employees, and I think I got my answer, as there are some species that frequent KBS that are genuinely pretty rare to find elsewhere. Outside of that, there were a few things that I knew that needed to happen in this design directly as well, which are listed below. It was remove junipers on site, fence the area in some way to keep birds off play structures and children within its confines, create play structures close to the ground and on theme, and be conscious of maintenance and long-term performance. Additionally, when surveying the small area, I noticed that there were plenty of mature trees, and I absolutely wanted to keep them to contribute to the theme of playing within nature. On to the precedent board. These were some images my client gave me and some images I pulled as I ideated. In general, the goal was to create an immersive, interpretive, and stimulating adventure playground. And an adventure playground, for those that are not familiar with the term, is a playground that is far less structured than traditional ones, with often self-directed and imaginative play, raw materials, loose timber, rather than standard fixed equipment. This was the plan that I came up with. It has 7 distinct areas, 5 of which are the play areas inspired by Michigan's key biomes. The overall concept was the idea that this blue streak you see in the middle is a migratory path, a fake jet stream or river made of rubberized mulch where kids are guided through the biomes like birds themselves, sort of migrating through the playground. This is that migratory path in question. Ideally, it would not only be made of rubberized mulch, but have painted silhouettes of life-size bird species that kids could, theoretically, lay down and compare their wingspans to. It's intended as not only a runway, but a sort of potential for scavenger hunts, education, and overall continuity of the playground. The first biome-themed play I'll touch on is the freshwater dunes, where the play form is to emulate a miniature version of those dunes on Lake Michigan's shore that many kids growing up within the area would be familiar with. The actions here are climbing and sliding, mainly. The star species, which are bird species that I wanted to highlight with every play area, is the piping plover. A star species would be a figurine that can be found, like a scavenger hunt, within each play space. And here, if you follow that orange label, you can see where she is, in a mock nest of how you would find a piping plover in the wild. Here's the Inland Lakes play area inspired by the game we all played as kids, The Floor is Lava. I wanted to create balance beams and stepping stones to encourage kids to treat the rubberized mulch on the ground as an actual lake, where they lose if they touch the ground. Even if they don't use it like this, it is set up for fun, interpretive play as they see fit, regardless. This would all lead them to the star species nest of one of the key species of the entire sanctuary, the trumpeter swan. The tamarack swamp definitely has some of the loosest play definitions, inspiring roleplay rather than structured play actions. The idea is to emulate a sense of playing among the tall grass and reeds of a swamp, encouraging kids to feel a sense of seclusion and safety among the wicker arcs, just like all the birds of the swamp do when they nest in the tall grass. The deciduous forest area is maybe exactly what a designer would imagine when someone tells them they're designing adventure play. It's climbing and swinging. I intended this play to take place among the somewhat established deciduous trees on the natural entrance of the site to further encourage the idea of playing with the trees. It would invite visitors in as sort of the first thing that people see of this playground. The star species of this biome play is also notable because it is an eastern screech owl, which KBS actually has on site in the Birds of Prey section. Lastly, at least for the biome-themed play, is the boreal forest, where I wanted to encourage a role-play setting somewhat like the tamarack swamp that I explained earlier, but we're creating play interpretations of conifer trees and inviting kids to use them as houses, in a sense. It could maybe encourage the idea that birds use these trees as houses as well. Additionally, there are some spinning pole swings that I used to love as a kid that could further enrich the area. Here are some sketches of one, a bird blind that I believe could be easily built into the fence surrounding the playground, incorporating a way for a new generation of birders to associate play with spotting local species. There are some forest stands surrounding the site that could prove productive with bird visitors that this could face. And 2, the gathering space on the north end of the site. This is not a huge area, but it is the only area of empty land that's being used now. And it was, in fact, used for gathering, and taking that away would have been a little pointless. This is a decent amount of space that could definitely be used for gathering field trips and summer classes of the like. And to wrap it all up, here's a board with my thoughts on possible materials. The goal was low maintenance, meaning that some of these materials might have higher implementation costs but won't need to be touched for decades. The key material here is black locust on the right, a wood that can stay rot-free in the ground for over 30 years and often more. While a little pricey, for natural feel, it is the #1 pick for adventure playgrounds. Similar woods can be rot resistant, but they still need constant yearly treatment to reach that status, not to mention they discolor and splinter. On top of that, some easy ways to emulate a natural material like stone is to use material here on the left, recycled concrete, also known as urbanite. It's cheap and high aesthetic value. Rubberized mulch is next, a safe option for places that need higher impact protection, and a much longer lifespan than loose wood mulch. For most of the site, however, we will use that loose wood mulch, or engineered wood fiber. It will create a natural feel, protect from impact, and have a low upfront cost, especially on areas with lower traffic, so it won't need to be replaced as much. Finally, the planting on site will be seeded. This is the best way to get a natural feel without too much maintenance. And when it is all bushy in the summer, that's where KBS can get their loads of summer interns to manage it. Thanks so much for listening.